Welcome back, Worlders. And today I wanted to see if it's stupid to save money, right? And we'll get more into it. But first, I wanted to give away another one of these hats. I got five different colors. I got gray, red, blue, olive green, and black, right? So I wanted to give away whoever makes the best comment down below, okay? In the next, I'll give you 3 days, okay? So today is the 6th. So let's say January 9th, 2025, I'll pick a winner of the best comment down below. And if it's something interesting, I'll probably make a video about it. So definitely do that, guys, and I'll send a free hat shipped directly to your house. So let's get into this video. We're going to talk about inflation and if it's stupid to save your money. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, guys. So today I wanted to discuss a video I just watched yesterday, and I thought was really interesting. It was a video from Jordan Peterson. I'm sure you probably heard of him if you deal with anything political or financial advice or anything like that. He's a very smart guy from Canada, and he's interviewing a guy named Pierre Poilievre. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but he basically might be the next leader of Canada because as of today, Justin Trudeau just announced he's resigning because the state of Canada is in chaos. And a lot of it has to do with inflation. So, first, let's get into this video. I'm going to kind of break it down and see what you guys think.
Our productivity is another major problem. Like right now, and that's productivity sounds complicated. It's actually extremely simple. You just take the GDP and you divide it by the hours worked in the country. So American GDP is $80. So for every hour an American worker works on average, he or she produces $80 of GDP. GDP. In Canada, it's 50. So that's every hour. So that means we have to work 60% more just to make the same amount and have the same level of income to buy food and housing. So that's the now.
So I thought that was really interesting. So basically what he's saying is that Canadians have to work 60% more to get the same thing that Americans get. So I don't know how you guys are doing it up there, Canada, but because I know me personally, I have to work basically two jobs in order to survive. So this is really terrible for Canada. So no wonder their prime minister had to resign. And I don't know why. So he kind of explains later about why the reason why they have to work so hard up there, and a lot of it's not their fault. It's not because they're lazy or anything like that, and it's because of other reasons. So let's get more into it.
Oh, that sounds like a bunch of wonk speak that might seem like it only matters to someone staring at a spreadsheet or a graph or a chart. But in fact, that's reflected in the fact that our 2 million people are lined up at food banks because they can't afford food, and 80% of youth can't afford homes. And our quality of life and the things we can afford to provide our kids have fallen back so much.
Well,
There's
it's a
real
pretty
life.
stark and easily comprehensible statistic.
Yeah.
I mean, if you work and you produce $80 worth of goods and services in an hour compared to working and producing 50, obviously that's a substantial shortfall.
Yeah.
So, and is there a starker indicator of the economic disparity between the US and Canada than that? Or do you think that's the primary statistic?
I mean, I think housing costs are another one. There was a study out just 10 days ago that has Toronto and Vancouver now by far the most unaffordable housing markets in North America. And so, housing.
Now that's saying something. So that means Canada is in the top for housing prices. Now, I don't know where you live, but I know where I live, housing pricing is basically getting out of control. You know what I mean? It's starting to sell down a little bit because people are going bankrupt and whatnot, and they can't afford these houses. So the pricing is kind of slowed down a little bit, but in the meantime, everything else is still high. and everybody's in debt. So it definitely makes it really hard to buy a house. So he's saying that Canada is even worse. Let's get into it.
Housing costs are 50% higher in Toronto than they are in Chicago, even though Chicago workers make 50% more money. The same is true between Vancouver and Seattle. Seattle workers make way more than Vancouver workers, but housing is 60 or 70% more expensive in Vancouver.
That's crazy because I live in Spokane, but a lot of people from Seattle are moving to Spokane, so they're jacking up our prices. And but to say that Seattle is actually cheaper than Vancouver is pretty crazy because I got a brother that lives over in Seattle and other family members, and their housing is insane. So I couldn't imagine making half the amount of a Seattle worker and my housing being twice as much. That would be just terrible.
So on
Right. So
all
we're
the
making
measures,
less by a lot. By a
yes,
lot.
by a lot,
Yeah.
and
Like
we're
40%, and
paying
we're
more.
paying more by a
Yeah.
lot. Right. And most of that's transpired in the last 10 years.
Yes, and we're paying the difference by accumulating enormous quantities of debt. Our households are by far the most indebted in the G7. When you divide total household debt by GDP, we now have a bigger stock of household debt than our entire economy. We are more indebted as households than the Americans were right before the '08 financial crisis.
So, in case some of you might be too young to remember the 2008 financial crisis, they were basically, you know, giving houses away for nothing. You know what I mean? So, like, they were just giving loans out like candy to people that literally couldn't afford it. And for some people, they took advantage of it. And if you're told you can afford a house, uh, who are you to argue with the bank, right? So a lot of people making minimum wage and whatnot would buy these big fat houses and get way over their heads. And then once the bubble bursted, the housing market started crashing. Um, a lot of people lost their homes, and so that was terrible. And I remember housing, geez, some housings went down like half in value, which was pretty bad. So they're saying that their debt to income is worse or the same as 2008 in Canada. And the reason why I kind of wanted to get into this Canadian video is because, uh, we're right behind them. I mean, that we were on path to doing what they were doing. So hopefully we can, switch it up or whatever. But I got some more pointers for you, so stay tuned.
And so what we have as a model in Canada is we have artificial scarcity imposed by a very heavy and restrictive state, confiscatory state. So that suppresses production.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to allow for consumption, we print money and borrow money and then flood the economy with that money.
Okay.
So what he's saying is that basically the so products and the supply of everything is being artificially suppressed through either regulation or government or something like that. So Canadians, it's not like they're not hard workers. They could produce more or make that $80 per hour or instead of 50. But the reason why they can't is because there's so many regulations that I mean, it could be the difference of uh, you know, if they have all these safety guidelines they gotta follow, and it takes an extra 2 hours a day to follow all these safety guidelines, then that might make them less productive as an employee. But now, is safety good? Yeah, but there's definitely a little overboard sometimes with some of those regulations. But we'll see how it goes. Okay. So this next part I thought was really interesting, and he's talking about how inflation hurts everyone. Let's get into it.
So that's another problem. So that's the inflationary problem.
Yes.
Now, the problem with inflation, just many problems with inflation, but one of them is that it particularly punishes people who are thrifty and who save.
Yes.
Right, right. So inflation punishes the people who forego gratification to invest in the future.
That's right.
Right. So that's a very bad idea.
It's a horrible. Inflation is the single most immoral tax for so many reasons. One, it takes from savers and people who are trying to be responsible, thus making it impossible to be responsible.
Right,
because you will, if you refuse to play the inflation game of borrowing money to buy things you can't afford, someone else inevitably will, and you won't be able to afford anything. So you ultimately have to act responsibly. It's like Milton Friedman was asked, what would you do with your money in times of inflation? He said, spend it.
Right, right.
Like the first thing you want to do when inflation is out of control is to make sure you get rid of this thing that's losing its value. The second reason it's immoral is it takes from the poor, because the poorest people they do not have the ability to buy inflation-proof assets like gold and real estate and fancy watches and art collections and fancy wines and things that go up with or even exceed inflation. So it's a very big wealth transfer from the poor and the working class to the very, very wealthy. A very small group of people actually get richer.
So the socialist.
So I thought that was really interesting. So basically, he's saying to act irresponsibly, which I thought was kind of funny. So that's really what really got me excited about this video was I thought that was just kind of interesting the way he said that was basically if you're trying to play the saving game where you're just pinching your pennies and hiding all your money under your mattress for a rainy day, you're losing out. You know what I mean? He's saying that if you don't spend that money quick, then you are basically losing money by the second. Because I was just talking to my family the other day about Traegers and like smokers and stuff like that. So I just told one of my family members that, hey, I just bought a smoker at Lowe's for $1,200, and he's like, what? Are you serious? $1,200? He's like, man, I just bought it a few years ago for $400. So that means this pit boss went up like 3 to 4 times its value in a couple of years. That is crazy. So if you were trying to save your pennies to try to save that for that pit boss, and let's say you were almost there to 300, well, before you know it, you'd go to Lowe's and you try to pick it up, and now it's 500. So now you got to go back home, save some more money, which might take you another couple of months, and then you go back. And so what this guy's saying is be irresponsible, and it might be beneficial to charge it. Which I wouldn't 100% recommend, because you don't want to get too crazy in debt, because debt can hurt you tremendously. I know, I think debt is probably one of the biggest things that hurt people, but in this case, debt can act, if you play your cards right, you can actually make debt work for you in an inflationary period. Now, I wouldn't recommend going out and buying pit bosses or cars or anything like that, things that are going to depreciate in value, but maybe things like houses or real estate or something like that that appreciate. And, and so what he's saying is that only the rich can basically afford to buy these houses, buy gold, silver, and I thought it was kind of interesting that he said, buy gold, because that way, instead of saving your money in, cash, like in your savings or something like that, why didn't you just go down to the coin shop and buy a few coins or whatever with that money instead? Now, that money is keeping up with inflation, basically. So that's basically what he's saying. And so I thought that was really interesting. So I think the moral of the story is kind of instead of putting money in the bank for cash, like in your checking and stuff like that, invest in gold and silver at least. If you're going to invest in anything, put it in gold and silver because that's real money. Now, I just made my last video. You can check it out. And I said gold and silver equals real money. So, and don't forget that because I think it's very important. Let's see if these guys got anything more to say, and let's get into it.
Policies that provide goods and services to Canadians, let's say, or denizens of other countries by printing money actually punish the poor brutally.
Oh, absolutely.
In consequence of the inflation that they generate.
Yes, I mean all the socialist policies in practice redistribute from the working class to the super wealthy in practice, and I can prove that again and again and again.
In theory.
In practice,
yeah.
In practice, they all the redistribution that happens in these so-called socialist countries ultimately goes from the working class to the super wealthy. That is the reality. But just one last thing on inflation. The final reason why it's so immoral is nobody votes on it. The basic principle of our parliamentary system is the government can't tax what Parliament has not voted. The people must, no taxation without representation, right? But no one ever votes to have the money printing happen. And so the inflation is adopted secretly, and you blame the grocer because groceries are more expensive, or your local gas station because gas is more, or your realtor because when in fact it was actually the government that bid up all of those things with money printing, and you didn't even know about it. So it is silent. It's a silent thief that takes from the poor and gives to the richest people, and it destroys the working class. And that's why I want to crush inflation. We need a policy that seeks to stop inflation at all costs.
Okay, so what?
So I thought that was kind of interesting. So he's basically saying that socialist policies and everything else. I don't want to get too political here, but he's basically saying that it always benefits the rich. Because now socialist policies usually. They claim they're trying to help the poor out by giving the poor money. But anytime you give the poor money, they basically have to print it. Well, anytime they print money, that's increasing inflation, which actually ultimately they proved that it, hurts the poor the most. So here they are trying to help you, but really they're hurting you. And so that's kind of the point of inflation. I know a lot of people get confused. I have a lot of family members that are like, I still don't know what inflation is, you know what I mean? And they're all confused about it. And I think this was a good example of why inflation is bad and why you should always try to keep inflation low and protect yourself by investing in gold and silver and other assets like real estate and maybe stocks or whatever. Something that's going to, increase in value as inflation increases, because, saving cash, a little bit of cash is okay. Just for, like if your car breaks down or something like that, you got to have some cash available, of course. But if you have like, $50,000 under your mattress, that's probably not smart. And so, it's kind of interesting. So, I think I'll stop it right here, guys. And we'll get into it next time. Make sure to comment down below so you can win a free hat. Now, remember, if I pick your comment in the next 3 days, I will send you a free hat. Make sure to, have a really good conversation down there, guys. The more, the merrier. Okay, let's get into it. Peace out.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go.